The first thing I wanted to ask you was that I mean, I've watched a lot of different sailing films. There's a lot of dodgy ones because it's so hard to get right. And I've just heard that you're a sailor as well. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. I started. I was on a smaller boats.
Yeah.
I was a competitive sailor from I was very young, probably 10 or 12. I started Optimist.
Oh, the
So I started
Oppie is the
Optimist, a little
what
matchbox.
rig were you sailing with a junk rig or with a?
I wouldn't know the difference.
Okay,
because
but
there's the language thing. Because
Yeah,
I was a
no,
kid.
okay, fine.
But like the little Optimist,
The little tub.
yeah, and with the one one
Yeah,
sail, and
absolutely.
the wood through it, and all that. And then I went to Flipper.
Yeah.
Because we had a lot of flippers in Iceland.
Okay.
And I won Iceland Championship in Optimist and Flipper, and then I had a laser. One of the first lasers in Iceland. My father bought me.
Which are fantastic boats
Fantastic
as well.
boats. There was this is in the 80s,
Yeah.
early 80s, and we hadn't never seen that boat, and that was so I competed on that a lot, and then I was offered to go to the Olympics on 470. That was
Right.
yeah.
So this is really serious.
Yeah. I was the crew, but at that time I kind of pulled out of it.
Yeah.
Because I was studying my drama studies at theater school.
Okay.
But in Iceland we couldn't really train during the winters. We had to go to Sweden.
Right.
And so I
That's
couldn't.
that's not much better.
No, but there's not icebergs anyway.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah, yeah.
Well, now we have a lot of that in Iceland, but it's just the conditions are too hard in Iceland, and the clubs are not open, and so I had to go on a training session in Sweden, and I couldn't do that, and didn't want to skip, and I was supposed to be the trapeze man.
Right.
But I was skipper also on many of these boats. But at that time, I had the perfect weight, 70-something kilos, and the height to do that. But I loved it, and I always regret it. And I had to say I almost went to the Olympics. That I went to the Olympics.
Well, it's our gain for this film that you decided not to, I think.
Yeah.
But I could tell from watching the film, I could see that there was someone behind it who really knew and attention to detail and things like that. Because sailors, we're all very pedantic. We sort of, if we see something wrong in a film about sailing, you go, no, that's wrong.
Yeah.
And so you must have been up to speed on that all the time.
Yeah.
Did you train the crew? I mean, did you train everybody?
Well, we had also support from other people because I was basically doing other things. But it doesn't really matter if you can't get your head as the captain of the film.
Yeah.
If you can't get your head around, if you don't know sailing,
Yeah.
nobody can really figure it out for you totally.
No.
You have to have an eye on it and understand it yourself.
Yeah.
There's so many details, and not only when you're shooting, when you're editing.
Right.
The editor would have the sail on the wrong side because he would cut two things together.
Which you see so many times in films.
Yeah, like
It's just,
suddenly
no.
the jib is on the wrong side. It's like,
Yeah.
no, it can't be. And stuff like that. And also I was quite a, you can't have if you're sailing downwind, you can't have the jib too much pulled in. All these things, it's like which most people wouldn't think about if it fits the frame.
Yeah.
And it was challenging because also the cinematographer, which is a brilliant Bob Richardson, who has won three Oscars.
He's the DP, right?
Yeah, he's the DP, but he wanted the sun to be behind us at all times, and that can be really, really tricky when you have to have the wind, and the wind doesn't really go in that direction, and keep the sail on the right side, and still, continue. So there's a lot of complications.
These are the problems that no one would ever think of.
Yes, but it does, at that point, it's really important that you know these details, because you can only go so far without, giving, make all the sailors in the world angry, which I did not want to.
Angry letters from sailing clubs all over the world. Yeah. And of course, there's the problem of making a film at sea, which is another thing that's, I noticed actually, one of the things that I noticed as a sailor is that the sea state was clearly in deep sea, which is something that often people get wrong. Were you filming at sea, out at sea?
Yeah, and that's what I said. We have to go beyond the reefs and far enough out, because the color and everything, you see the difference. You see the difference, how the waves swell,
long,
all that
swells.
stuff. So we had to sail out through the reefs every day and get far enough so you wouldn't see the difference of coloring and get the swells right.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a lot of study, and this is the problem when you shoot in a tank. For example, people don't really shoot in a tank that much. It's more dry docks today. But anyway, if you shoot in a tank for the more quiet scenes, you'll never get the waves right, because it's like the echo from the sides. They hit the side, come back, and they splash together. And that doesn't happen on sea. You know? It's the constant movement of the ocean. So all these things, of course, that's so important to me, knowing the sea, and in some way understanding it. and loving it. I love the ocean, and it's my passion.
Whereabouts were you? Where were we filming? In the
Well,
Southern Ocean?
we were out of the north part of Fiji.
Right.
Which is the best, because you can get the swells in. We have to find places where you get from New Zealand, and you can just. And that way, if you go a little further out, you will have more wind. If you can a little closer in, you can get it. So you can make the continuity of things more easy for you.
Great. Okay,
so you can control by how far out you go, because there's a little sheltering of land, even though you are miles off. You still have shelter from the land. But if you go a little further out there, suddenly you're in bigger swells.
Just brings up new problems and God. Yeah.
But I love it. This is the thing, you've been a sailor. You would understand that, is that when I was talking to the studio about this, they were like, "Oh, how are you going to make your plans? Is this all going to go wrong?" No. The sea is more predictable than you think.
Yeah, okay.
It's actually something there's going to be this or this or this. It's pretty much, and sometimes it's going to go too much, and we just have to do something else. Mm-hmm. But mostly, and because I had only 2 people on the boat, I could go from okay, let's shoot this scene today, because it fits better to the weather.
Yeah.
And in the end of the day, we brought it in, one day under, so.
And you got some fantastic performances from them as well.
Which is all, of course, part of being, I've been telling people, like, the first day you have all these people, basically taking selfies and, oh, this is so wonderful, and I can't believe they pay you for doing this, would be your passion. Yeah. But then an hour later, they're all throwing up, we're carrying buckets of puke from the galley, because the crew had to be downstairs, and that's the worst place to be.
Yeah.
And then things got real, and you feel like, when you've been on the water for a while, your body changes, your appearance changes,
Yeah.
And I think that's incredibly important to me, that we get them real.
Yeah. We're done.